I'm going to tell you a secret of life. And it's the fact that the best parts of somebody are the worst parts of them. And same for you. The best parts of you are the hardest, or you could say worst parts of you. Some of the things that we struggle with the most are actually our assets in a different form. And same thing in others. The parts of others that you don't like, it's actually masking something really unique and powerful about them. And the very same thing, the exact same things that you love somebody for and the things you love yourself for also have a dark side. And so what I'm about to tell you, what I'm about to share with you, you could either use for pessimism or you could use it for optimism. And of course, here in Pursuit, we're going to use it for optimism. And I'm going to give you a framework to reframe how you see both yourself and others. Because if you're trying to accomplish the most excellent things in your life, very individual, your life, what you have defined, what your pursuits are, you need to shift your view of even those, quote, bad parts of yourself into something good. And I'm going to tell you about that here and how I came to that realization. This idea of reframing is something that my dad put into my head years ago. And I noticed it very blatantly when I stepped into the engineering world, which is a very male-dominated field. And if you know me, my second demon in life was sexism. It would make me so angry to the point where I would break out in hives because I was so angry. I would physiologically react to sexism once I realized it was a thing. You couldn't even associate pink with a girl and blue with a boy without absolutely sending me. I mean, that's how sensitive I was at the time, and I have empathy for that version of me. What shifted things for me was when I started seeing being a woman in the world and at work as an asset, of seeing myself as a unique person. So in the line of a job fair, there would be a guy, you know, an engineer, mechanical engineer, like guy, and then there would be me. And I come with my own privileges. I mean, I'm a white middle-class female. I fully understand I'm not that unique on the outside. However, in this demographic of mostly males, I stood out, you know, in the sense because I was a female. And I started using it as, you know, a way to stand out and a way to make myself known. And then I delivered. You know, you got to deliver. And now I love, you know, having a different perspective on my team and kind of shaping the way, maybe if people have outdated views about women in STEM and math related fields, shifting how people see others in my field and basically being a good example for others. So that's a very easy way that I can show that. But over these last couple of weeks, I've really noticed in people how some of the things that they find hardest about themselves, I can actually see as an asset. And what is the definition of an asset? An asset is something that appreciates or grows in value over time. And so with this idea in mind, if you can identify what your assets are through looking at what your struggles are, you can actually grow these and actually use it to your advantage in the things that you want to accomplish. And this really came full circle to me when I was on a run on the order of 3 weeks ago, and I spent an hour in silence, as I sometimes do, to let my mind think through every thought that it wants to have. And I got onto the topic of food and controlling of food. And the question that shifted everything for me was when somebody asked me, what are you not trying to control with your food? Because that actually resonated with me. I had heard so many times, what are you trying to control with food? And that never resonated with me because I have the ducks in a row in my life. I am on top of my things. There's an administrative thing in my life that needs to be taken care of. I am on top of it. I have my career planned. I plan it several years in advance, and then I backtrack my way to know what to do every single day. I'm a very logical person in that sense. And I realized in that moment that in times of stress, I go to over planning things. I'll plan things down to the hour. And so it only makes sense that I would feel that same level of comfort when I'm tracking my food down to the calorie and down to the gram, measuring everything. And if you've ever felt relief if you've ever been like me and you've only felt relief from food noise when you're tracking everything, this is what I'm talking about, that control, or that sense of control over yourself. And I realized it only makes sense. Like, I have such a control over my career. Well, actually, a topic for another episode is our perception of control and what we have control versus not. Because I guess humans do have this desire for this perception of control, but how much control do we really have over things? That's the free will conversation that Samo and I should have on here. Anyways, I digress. So I noticed in times of stress or of life stress, I start making a bunch of lists of everything that I want to get done. And I would notice this at work. I would keep a running task list of everything I needed to get done, and it would just overwhelm me looking at this. But that was my default. It was my default to try to control everything down to the very last detail. And so this idea of being able to make a plan and stick to it, it leads me to have a lot of discipline, which is actually, I think, the quality that has led me to have the happiest life. Like, I am and I'm genuinely happy, because for me, what works for me is making a plan and sticking to it. I know that doesn't work for everyone, but that's what I'm here to share with you on Pursuit, is what I've learned about how to cultivate a happy life, cultivate moments of happiness along the way. And for me, that comes when I am going after a goal that's meaningful to me. And it's not necessarily just a resume accomplishment, but it's these experiences, and it's that goal. It's having that goal that leads you to have these cool experiences along the way. And so I truly think that this is my best quality, is discipline. I think if I had to say one best quality about myself, it's discipline. And at the very same time, that is the hardest thing. Because I have that discipline, it is also the hardest thing for me to just grapple living as me in day-to-day life. Like, if you were Anya, the best thing that you would feel is the discipline, and the worst thing that you would feel is discipline. And I say worst as in it's the hardest. It can lead to some struggles, because I feel guilty anytime that I have a sliver of not being disciplined. And then 2, I can get very granular when it comes to discipline about say, food. But, I realize I don't need to change this about myself. And I don't think you should change these hardest parts about you either, because without that dark side of it, you also wouldn't have the light side. Something that my mentor said is, your stripes are permanently etched on you. And I love that saying for several reasons. It's multi-layered, that saying. The power of it for me, one, is the fact that black and white stripes on a zebra, they live side by side. The good lives with the bad, right next to each other, the light and the dark. And then 2, your stripes are permanently etched on you. It gives me this confidence that I'm always going to be this person who is disciplined, because it leads me to happiness. And of course, I want to continue being happy. And so then this idea came into my head, and then I started noticing it everywhere. So the second time I really noticed it is when my friend was explaining to me that he was feeling really overwhelmed at his job, even when he tries to communicate that with his manager, because And I realized it's because he's so good at his job, because and so he's tasked with more, and so he feels overwhelmed. And so the best part of him when it comes to work is that he is such a diligent worker, and you can count on him to get things done in a very ethical way. But the hard part is that he can get anxiety about his workload and the ethics behind what's going on. Like, that is the best and the worst thing not like the worst thing about him, but a way that I see that it's very hard for him to have this amazing trait of this diligence, of speaking up when he sees that something's wrong. It's the best part about him as an employee, and then it's also very hard for him. And the number 3 is an example of my best friend. And she has this incredible capacity to love people. And she would do so much for someone, like go out of her way to pick somebody up from the airport, or buy them little things like spare socks when she sees them and thinks of the person. And I have heard from her, and I've heard her pain of experiencing deep disappointment when people don't show her the same love in return that seems to come so naturally for her. And so the positive, the beautiful thing about her is her capacity to love, and that she's a very loving person. Relationships are so important to her, to feel needed. And she's an amazing friend, an amazing provider. And if you are loved by her, you are the luckiest person in the world. And so the downside of that is sometimes she can feel this sense of lacking in reciprocation sometimes, and this emptiness in return. And it's been really interesting to hear that and to understand that. And so the key here is that each of the things we struggle with tells us what's important to us. So number one, for me, being disciplined. That's the number one important thing to me. My second example, delivering ethically sound work. That's important to him. Number three, cultivating deep and meaningful relationships. These are all good things. They all show we care. It shows what we care about. Your struggles show you what you care about. If somebody didn't care about being an ethical person and making sure the job was done right, they wouldn't struggle with that. If a person was more go with the flow, not like me, they'd be okay not controlling details like down to their food. And if a person wasn't laissez-faire about their relationships, they wouldn't struggle feeling like the care isn't always reciprocated. So now that you've heard these examples, I want you to be able to reverse engineer your struggles. What is something in your life that truly feels like what I call a demon, but really something that either constantly disappoints you or causes you stress or sadness or angst or anxiety in your life? Is it constantly fighting with your parents because you disagree with how they think you should live your life? Is it anxiety over checking to see if the stove is off by having to put your hand on the burner 5 times and checking that it's not going to burn you? Is it the fact that you're a little closed off with your feelings so that the people that you're attracted to can't understand what you're thinking? Are you so introspective that you can drive yourself insane? Okay, now let's reframe all of those things. In the first example, you're a headstrong person. You could have a career. You could have an amazing career as a lawyer or be a prolific writer with controversial views. Number 2, if you're anxious about things, what shifted anxiety for me was, this is my brain trying to protect myself. This is your brain trying to protect you from potential harm. It's saying these are all the potential harms out there. This is what could happen. And it's protecting you. And you're going to be a very detail-oriented person because you're always going to be vigilant, that you're going to be safe. That is a good thing. The third example, if people tell you that you're maybe a little bit closed off and people can't tell you what you think, you are going to be careful with your words, and you're not going to make promises that you can't fulfill. That's important to you, is your integrity. And then the last one is maybe you're so introspective that you just sometimes like your own mind is so difficult for you to be in. Maybe you will make a great philosopher, or maybe you will be an amazing therapist who can connect on such a deep level that other people can't, and get inside the minds of these people and tap into that and be one of the best connections that these people have had. So you can see what you struggle with actually shows what you care about, and what you care about you can turn into fuel for your pursuits. So what I want to leave you with here today is that the best parts of you and the hardest parts of you are not separate things. They're just the same thing viewed from a different side. And growing as a person, growing your assets, is not about removing your stripes, quote. It's about learning how to use them for good. And when you stop trying to erase the hard parts of yourself and start redefining them, that's how they become something that can appreciate over time. Your struggles are not evidence that something is wrong with you. They're just evidence of what you care about. And when you learn to align those struggles with your pursuits, that's how you turn your demons into some sort of direction. So this week, instead of asking what's wrong with me or what's wrong with somebody else, ask, what is the strength hiding in this struggle? Because the life that you're trying to build and your pursuits and the pursuit that is going to be right for you isn't waiting on a different version of you. You see, it's built from the exact person that you are. You just have to hone in those strengths and use them for good, and turn even the hardest and the worst parts about you into something good. And then at the very same token, you can now look at other people in a more positive light too. If there's something about, be very observant. When somebody tells you what they really like about themselves, you can also use this to think very realistically about other people in understanding what's going to be the hardest part of them. I'll give you an example of when I was on study abroad with this girl, and she was so controlling of the people in our group, and she wanted things done a certain way for the project. And I was able, and when we would go to museums together, she would tell me, "Oh, don't touch the art." When I was 21 years old, like I know not to touch the art, okay? I'm not a child, okay? And on one hand, somebody could just see that and be annoyed. Like, why is this girl so controlling, both in school on this project and then out in day-to-day life? When I reframed it though, and when I saw it as, she's going to be somebody that's very dependable to have all the details set. Like, I knew that if we went somewhere together, she was going to be on top of her stuff. In the project, she was going to get her work done, and she was going to get it done well. And it's this way of creating happiness in your life, because it's about reframing these hard parts of somebody into the good parts. If somebody I have this other person, not currently in my life, but was in my life, who's a very deep thinker, like such a deep thinker in kind of a dark way. And we could just have the most intellectual conversations and like deep conversations, very candid conversations, and the humor was very dark humor, which appealed to me when I was in the mood for that. And then it was also hard. Like, that very same thing that I really liked about this person was also very hard, because it was like very dark poet vibes. And so, but when I think of this person, I just think of appreciating that vibe of them and taking the good, acknowledging the bad, and not changing the person. And then same thing with the girl with the study abroad, just acknowledging, like really trying to see what is the asset of this person here and focus on that, because where attention goes, energy flows. So focus on the good parts of people, and you'll honestly just be a more happy person in life. And then when it comes to your own struggles, when you understand that you don't have to change them, you just have to redirect them into something positive, and take a second to think about what do these struggles say about what's important to you, and then use that as fuel in helping figure out what it is that you're really passionate about. In the case of my best friend, relationships are very important to her. So she's going to be fulfilled in part by when she has her family and her partner and everything. And that's going to be great. That's going to bring a great deep sense of fulfillment to her. And that's great. And sometimes looking at our struggles really tells us what's important to us today. So thank you for joining me for another episode of Pursuit. I would love to hear your thoughts. What is a struggle that you have that you think that you could turn into a strength? Or tell me a dark side of one of your strengths in the comments. So with that, I hope you have a lovely Tuesday, and I'll be sure to see you next week. Bye.